Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who's excited to review the new song by The Smile some other time. Before I get to that, I need to first talk about something else that Jonny Greenwood is doing, his album with Dudu Tassa Jarak Qaribak. I don't know, my pronunciation is going to be rough. Please forgive me. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to get laughs out of my inability to pronounce words, but this album is all over the place in terms of language and pronunciation, and I really just want to focus, before getting in the album in general, about what is it that Jonny Greenwood is doing. Obviously, he's a great guitarist, a member of one of the 3 best bands of all time, great songwriter, but he's sort of transitioning into something interesting here. And I'm going to put forth kind of a weird theory. Because, when you think about a musician who had a successful rock career, did a lot of very good soundtrack work, and then went on to become one of the main figures and faces of world music, it reminds me strongly of Ry Cooder. Now, presumably, if you're watching my video, you don't know who Ry Cooder is. He's kind of an older guy, but he's a very interesting guy because, he did great soundtracks like Southern Comfort, Streets of Fire. He's one of my brother's favorite musicians. But he also made rock music, and then he also is the reason that, there's a huge Cuban music explosion. Ali Farka Touré from Mali, he helped to spread his music all over the place. Ry Cooder is just, normal white guy, but he sort of did God's work in spreading music of the world to places where we don't listen to world music. And I think that's a lot of what Jonny Greenwood is doing here with this album, which came completely out of left field to me. I assume that he listens to a lot of interesting music, but I was not expecting this album. So I'm going to be talking about it in that context, because I talk all the time on this channel about fighting English linguistic hegemony, about how powerful it is, basically there's nothing on earth that is as powerful as English's stranglehold on world language, right? There's no privilege, I think, that is quite as understudied as that of being born in the English-speaking world, and he is doing God's work. Or if you don't believe in God, he is doing the right thing. He is doing a good thing in fighting English hegemony with this project, which is also very explicitly anti-tribalist, anti-nationalist, anti-religious fight. I mean, the person who's working with Dudu Tassa, his whole story, I need to tell you right off the bat, I'm not going to be doing a full breakdown of every single country and every single geopolitical conflict or historical fact that is implied by this album. That would take me months to do. Actually, my son's in the other room playing Zelda. He might do a better job of it. He's a political scientist. He studied this a lot more than I have. But just understand that this is an album which is Jonny Greenwood, one of the most British white guys you could possibly have, and then Dudu Tassa. And the Dudu Tassa story is just completely wild. He's Israeli, but he sings in Hebrew and Arabic, and his grandparents and his great uncle were Salah and Daoud al-Kuwaiti, do my best with the pronunciation there, who were Jewish musicians, very famous musicians in Iraq. All of these kinds of geopolitical questions are just posed by the very existence of these musicians. And when we have these guest appearances, they're coming from all over the place. They're coming from Morocco, Tunisia, and Egypt, and United Arab Emirates. I mean, really all over the place. And it's an amazing political act just in its juxtaposition, just in taking these musicians from these different places and bringing them together. Now, it helps that, as the kids would say, you might not know who Ry Cooder is, but you might use the word slap. The music slaps, as they say. You can hear my son cringe from the other room. And when we're thinking about, why even listen to this, part of me actually resented Ry Cooder, because I sort of felt like I was into Ali Farka Touré before his Ry Cooder album, and so part of me kind of feels like, man, you don't need some white guy to tell you what's good music made by not white people, but maybe you do. Look at me. Was I out there trying to find interesting music from Iraq? No, I wasn't, okay? So even me, Mr. Mr. Globalist, Mr. Loving the World, Mr. Anti-English Hegemony. My knowledge of music, especially music in Arabic, is extremely limited to stuff that I have heard in France, some Moroccan music, some Algerian music, but in general, I am very, very ignorant. So we do need figures like Jonny Greenwood. Do not think you are a buster if you listen to this album because you needed Jonny Greenwood to tell you what's cool, and you needed Dudu Tassa to basically DJ Khaled this whole thing and bring all these people together, and you're like, what's he even doing? He's doing more than DJ Khaled. But really, it's an amazing project, and it's a great album to listen to. And one of the fun things about it is just sort of wondering, like, where's Johnny? You know, like where is he in this whole thing? You know, there's after Argentina got beaten by Saudi Arabia in the opening round of the World Cup, which they unfortunately beat France. There's a guy on TV who's just running around, just going, "Where's Messi?" And he was kind of trolling, and so I kind of think of that. I just sort of imagine some guy on TV being like, "Where's Johnny? Where's Johnny? You know, where is Johnny on this album?" Because it's filled with mostly Arabic singing. It's filled with Arabic percussion and instrumentation and songwriting and old songs of your great-grandparents or your grandparents' generation. How does Johnny fit into this? Is this just him kicking back and being like, hey, everybody, listen to these guys? Is Johnny the DJ Khaled of this project? You know? He's like, God did! All right, bringing up someone else. No, he's everywhere. He's everywhere. And if you're a Radiohead fan, you have to listen to Jarak Qaribak. Jonny Greenwood is doing some of his best, most interesting work. I think it's more like Radiohead than The Smile. And that sounds crazy. But I really think it is, because there's certain ways, like the bass work on this album reminds me so strongly of Radiohead bass work. The atmosphere, the sensibility, the way that it uses drum machines and acoustic drums, or as they call it in the credits, machine drums. The guitar work here is so Radiohead-ish. Really, if you're looking for that Radiohead itch, and we all are, I'm a Radiohead super fan, I'm dying for their new album. Meanwhile, I'm just pleased as punch that they keep on doing The Smile and that Johnny's doing this. I'm happy to wait, and I'm extremely impatient, if that makes sense. But it really does work as a Radiohead-esque project, because Jonny Greenwood, when you listen carefully, not when you just put it on for the first time and go, all right, what's this? What is this? I don't understand this language. What is this? What is this? Okay, I'm just going to go back and listen to the B-sides. I'm just going to listen to Citizen Insane one more time. No, just really, really listen more carefully. I mean, politics are everywhere, and I don't know. I don't know, you know? Just to tell you how much politics are everywhere, the narrator of this entire album is Niran Bassoon. And if you type her into Google, you're going to get like 10 responses. And like the first 5 are accusing her of being a Zionist, anti-Palestinian propagandist. Then like the next 5 are going to describe how she's this great journalist who's shining light on disenfranchised people. It is not my purview or my desire to solve the Palestinian conflict on this YouTube channel, but just to say that not only is this filled with interesting juxtapositions, but even to discuss these things, you know, even to discuss the existence of a lot of these people is itself a political act. And Americans, hey, British people in the Anglophone world in general don't have to think about the political nature of your own existence. Some people do, but very rarely. But let me give you an example. Let me give you an example of this. Let's just start with the first track. Most likely, you listen to it because you like Johnny, and then you go, I don't like this kind of music, and then you moved on. But let me give you little details here with the song Djit Nishab. Djit Nishab. I'll try to get the R's there. Featuring Ahmed Doma, who is an Egyptian dissident. Again, the politics are all over the place here. Starts off with machine drums, letting you know Johnny's always going to be here. This isn't Where's Waldo, this is Where's Johnny, and Johnny's right there. The violin comes in. It's the thing about Middle Eastern music, which I am not an expert on, I know virtually nothing about. So feel free to tell me in the comments every single time I'm wrong. I promise you I'm not defensive, okay? I'm talking about this because I want more people to listen to this album. I'm not talking about this because I'm a world expert on world music. Okay, but the violin, the way that it's played, the scales that are played, the tones that it has reminds me of other Arabic music that I've heard. But then it's like matched with this automatic machine drum, which very much feels like the Radiohead meets the Middle East. It's kind of boops and bleeps in the back. The voice is echoed. The strings get louder and more staccato, and actually reminds me strongly of "Burn the Witch" off of Radiohead's last album, which was released in 1834. At least that's how it feels. Then there's some traditional drums and then some background vocals, and then Johnny gets on guitar and you just go, oh, that's Johnny Greenwood guitar. Johnny Greenwood is a very, very, very underrated guitar player. I think a lot of the praise that someone like Johnny Marr gets is very deserved, but Johnny Greenwood does a lot of things that Johnny Marr does without getting the same kind of credit. I mean, just having such a signature sound, complexity and taste, all those things all being put together, and a project like this really helps to highlight that. When you take Johnny out of Radiohead or out of anything and put him into a totally alien context, and you hear that his languid, lurchish ability to play these sort of single notes and odd chords, that it can go anywhere. That's a very impressive trick. And in the middle of this song, frankly, you could take out the lyrics and you could add Tom York. As we'll see later, you could actually add Tom York like singing these lyrics, you know? I poured love, now it's now mixed in my drink. I came to read, to shake off love. I poured your name, about you I always think. You know, kind of downbeat lyrics, which you could sort of imagine as a Tom song. There's a female background vocalist on here. There's so many layers. It's so well produced. It's so rich. There's this great, and again, I don't know the names of all the drums or the Arabic percussion here, but I believe it's some kind of Arabic hand drum that matches with the machine drum. There's this little moment. You just have to listen to it. I'm not even going to tell you where it is because I want you to listen to the whole song to get ready for it. There's just a little pause, a little instance. The album is filled with little instances like that, and it's just this really beautiful, expansive moment. Beautiful Johnny guitar line, and then you realize that actually a lot of the solos he plays, even with Radiohead, sort of sound like they're non-Western scales. And then as we get towards the end, there's like a full Radiohead style, like King of Limbs, Moonshaped Pool style flugelhorn and horns, creating this sort of gloaming sound, and the machine drums and the Radiohead guitar, which is often single notes played in arpeggiated chords, sort of very kind of punchy and rhythmic itself. And then just every once in a while, every once in a while, I don't edit, every once in a while they'll throw something new in, like this very oddly loud violin. Towards the end, the singer gets backed up by Dudu Tassa singing his melismatic voice, and then a very cool Radiohead-ish distorted cool ending with like a siren sound and claps, and it's rhythmically crazy, and Radiohead gets rhythmically nutty. Arabic music gets rhythmically nutty. We need more rhythmic nuttiness. There's these claps and the left and the right, and these sounds and the siren and the horns and the singing, and it is a beautiful song. Then when you actually study what the song is, like the sort of what's implied. So these songs aren't new songs. These are songs from the grandparents' generation. So just as one example, Ahmed Wahbi is the person who wrote this song, and he's from Marseille, which is the city where I lived for a year. For the soccer team I support, I'm going back there this summer. I love Marseille. It's right across the Mediterranean, so it is the home of many immigrants, be they Phoenician, be they Greek, be they Italian, or be they Algerian, okay? So he was a Algerian singer who actually died in Algeria, went back there, and he wrote this song, and so it's this whole very sad song. It's called I Came to Drink, sort of a very poetic song. I've had enough of being lonely and my worries. I'm worn out. My lover never called me. This is how to disappear completely. No, I'm sorry. But don't say I cried. Oh, I cried. A man's tears are precious. You'll understand when he says, I sought, I asked, you, my lover, who longed for, you lie, you say, I forgot, I came to drink. A very dark, deep, beautiful poem. And then just for fun, I was looking up Ahmed Wahbi, and it turns out his song was sampled for one of my top 10 French rap songs of all time. Tonton du Bled. Tonton du Bled. It's a whole song about going back to North Africa with your family, an experience very important for French rap. It's like one of the most sort of emblematic French rap songs about the immigrant experience. Beautiful song. I had no idea it was a sample. I didn't know it was sampled from an Algerian singer, and here it is. And this is a great thing about projects like this. They give you just the smallest little peek into your own ignorance. And so I'm like, oh snap. Like Ahmed Wabi, I bet all of his music is good. I bet there's a whole world. I bet there's a whole depths of Arabic music that I just can't wait to experience, that I could have experienced through 113, but now the rap group, the French rap group, 113, but now I am experiencing thanks to Jonny Greenwood, the never-aging Jonny Greenwood. That dude is older than me, but he looks like he's 10 years older than I was when I started listening to him. I started listening to him when I was 12. Ashfaq Skye is the next song, featuring Rachid Al-Nahir, who is, I guess, Syrian and Lebanese from Beirut. Very dramatic, old-sounding piano here. Like whenever I think about sort of more traditional Arabic music, like an example of a singer I know fairly well is Khartoum, Egyptian sort of superstar. This sort of reminds me of that kind of old-sounding piano, and then the flute and the string instrument. And it's beautiful because the traditional instruments mix perfectly with the machine drums and the guitar. Great layering, wonderful atmosphere, and this piano that just... You can see Johnny in the way that he's playing, the way the piano can sort of fall apart. Tach Udub, featuring Nour Freitik. So I always pronounce things in French. That's my default, so I apologize. Who's a Palestinian singer. This one's a little bit like, has this like, it sounds like an automated drum, but it's a real Middle Eastern drum being played by a human being. So that's kind of a weird thing. It's a machine drum that sounds like a real person. The singer actually matches the notes. There's just like full strings. She has this great... The only way I can describe this singer's accent is it's a knowing accent. Like, I don't know. It's a very seductive voice. This guitar kind of curls around. Johnny has that way of writing these guitar lines that feel like they're tentacles that are just absorbing your brain, that kind of like curly bit there. And then there's a full computer bit with automated sounds. And then, my auditors, I'm confused. Because there's a bass line on here, and then later in the album too, that is what I associate with Tom York. Tom York plays bass on his solo projects in a certain way. And I just assumed that was Tom York bass. But I think this is Dudu Tassa playing the bass and produced by Jonny Greenwood. So I might have to revisit what Tom York bass is. Next song is called Laylit Hub by Mohseddin Salahdin from Morocco. Night of Love. Again, these are all sort of old standards or old songs. Automated bloopy sound, more of that tom bass drum machine. Like, you might think that you're in Morocco, or you might think that you're in Oxford hanging out with Radiohead. The voice is super clear. Just the production on the voice all the way throughout. Because really, Dudu Tassa doesn't do much singing. And Jonny Greenwood doesn't do any singing. I don't even know what that would sound like. But they sort of feature these singers from all these other places singing these old songs, and the way the voices are so produced is just beautiful. The bass here reminds me of the best parts of King of Limbs. There are good parts to that album. The flute is kind of quiet and cool, very muted horns, and the percussion is way behind the beat. And this is a thing where, again, when you talk about percussion being cool, is this like an influence on Radiohead? This kind of cool, like the beat being so far behind because it reminds me of Radiohead songs? Or is this just sort of serendipity? They go together. There's this beautiful voice, female voice at the end that is matched by these lower strings. Yahmugir Al-Ghazala, featuring Kahar Al-Saidi, an Iraqi singer. Just the voice to start, and this is a nice moment because most of the album kind of starts with machine drums. The songs start with machine drums. Here it's just this voice, and I was sort of wondering / hoping it was just going to be this guy's voice, because when you only know Arabic singing, most Americans only know the sound of Arabic singing from TV or movies when they show a bad actor in the Middle East, or they show some kind of conflict and they will have that music go along, and that's the only way you hear it. And it's often not even differentiated from a call to prayer. You know, it's like some Hollywood nobody just goes, how do we indicate that we're in Iraq? I don't know, put some song on there, put some guy calling to prayer, you know. So when you really listen to this much Arabic, Middle Eastern vocals, it's amazing. It's really, you get into the nuances and the differences of the sounds and the styles. And here, having the voice to start is just great. The drums are very kind of far away, more that kind of what I consider to be tom bass, little instrumental moment with a tinkling piano, and a very, very Johnny guitar line. Ahibak, I Love You, by Safia Safi of United Arab Emirates. And this is another thing I like about this, you know? Like, what do I know about United Arab Emirates? Okay, what do I know? What do you know? Okay? You might remember Abu Dhabi from That's Where Garfield would send Odie in the Garfield comics. You might not know Abu Dhabi is the capital. That's the capital, right?
Yep.
Good. Always got to check. But other than that, you know, they got a lot of oil, and that's it. You might know that they own Manchester City, who somehow managed to win the Champions League with, you know, the second or third best player in the world. But, you know, that's it. That's all you know. And it's part of why music is so important, part of why culture is so important, because now when I meet someone from Abu Dhabi, from the UAE, I'm not just going to say, oil, money, Garfield, Harland. I can say, hey, do you know Safia Safi? Because I like the song Ahibak. Cool haunted keyboards to start, settles perfectly with the strings and percussion, and then just like she follows the melody with her voice. Really hardcore bass happening in the back here, and then there's what I can only describe as Radiohead style harpsichord. They find this tone on the harpsichord that's like kind of ominous. This is the most Western and sort of construction of the song. There's like a cinematic, what I assume is mandolin solo, very neat distant sound in the end. Yahanid Yahyaba, featuring Lynn A, who I could find literally zero about. I don't know where Lynn A is from. I assume that Lynn A is not from Lynn, Massachusetts. Beyond that, I don't know where they're from. Full drum machine, voice leading, doubles with this nice high whine in the background. Very Radiohead drum machine, just all over the place. But what I find is that when it sounds more like Radiohead with the machine drums, the more I miss the Arabic percussion, because I just love the hand drums, the ringing sounds, the interesting rhythms. Next song is Lahla Yahzid Ikhtar, which apparently means so it doesn't get any worse. And this is the only song on the album that's just Dudu and Johnny. Arpeggiated synthesizer, a little bit odd and weird, that interacts with what I think is an oud and flutes. Nice kind of synthesis of the two different styles of drums. I do like his voice a lot. I like Dudu Tassa's voice a lot. There's a desperation in his voice, and he's then joined by other sounds. I almost picked this as the song to listen to, but I find that it's not actually exemplary of the album, because most of the album features other people, such as the final track, Yahan Al-Galb Salik, featuring Noah Mane, who is a Tunisian singer. Again, you probably don't know much about Tunisia, so there you go. It's more than just the Star Wars and delicious desserts. According to a website that I looked up, this is a singer who is threatened with death threats for singing with an Israeli singer, so it's kind of a political act having them on here as well. Clear voice with the bass behind, kind of a staggered, simple rhythm is behind. Machine drums get more and more present, and there's a beautiful, this is a perfect ending song, because in a way, it's sort of like Life in a Glass House. It has that kind of like woozy, extended jazz feel with this. I think it's a trumpet that interacts with with the machine drums, and you just want more of it. You just want more of this sound. It's just jammy and bloopy, and it's really, really great. So there you go. I hope you listen to this album. I love it. I really enjoy listening to it, and I'm going to try to track down some of these original songs and some of these original singers, you know, because that's hopefully what this will do for the world. It will help the world say, same way Ry Cooder was like, hey, listen to Cuban music, listen to Buena Vista Social Club, even though I was into Cuban music before Buena Vista Social Club. Thanks, Vim Vendors. I'm such a half-assed hipster. I really hope that it does, because the music is great and it helps us to further humanize people who, let's face it, the Middle East is rarely humanized for Americans. It's seen as a series of victims and villains, and the lens of victims and villains is no way to find each other's humanity. This album is. Okay, there you go. There's the camera.